Hey guys, this is Ian, and today I'm going to start my SDL 2.0 series. This series will teach you how to use SDL 2.0 to make games and graphical interfaces. So, what is SDL? SDL, or Simple Direct Media Layer, is the most widely used library for creating graphical games and interfaces in C and C++. So let's hop on in. First, you need to set up SDL on your system. You can click these links to go to LazyFoo and Twinkle Bear Dev's website, which both have very good tutorials for setting up SDL on your system. Alright, now let's get coding. So, the first thing you want to do once you've set up SDL is make sure that you've linked to SDL to SDL2 main and SDL2 image. So, first we want to include IO stream because we're going to be using that to report errors. We also want to include SDL.h, or in some cases, SDL2/SDL.h, but I don't need to do that. And then also include SDL image.h. Alright, there we go. Now, let's open up our main function. Alright, so first of all, before we do anything, we need to initialize SDL and SDL image. So, we call the SDL init function with the flags of what we want to initialize. In this case, we're going to initialize everything. SDL init will return a value that's not 0 if there is an error. So we're going to check for if this is not 0. And if it's not 0, then we're going to say that there was an error. As you see here, we can call the SDL getError function to see the details of our error. Alright, then we need to initialize SDL image. SDL image allows us to load pictures, such as PNGs or JPEGs and things like that. Without SDL image, you can only load bitmaps, and bitmaps don't have transparency, and in general, I don't like them. So we're going to use SDL image. So this one's a bit more complicated. Alright, so that basically just initializes SDL image and also checks if it returns an error or not. So if it returns an error, we're going to say that it failed. And once again, we're calling SDL getError. Oh, one thing that I forgot to put in both of these error messages is to return. Whoops. Alright, there we go. So the program will exit if there's an error. Alright, Next thing is to open up a window, because you need a window to display your graphics in. So first we're going to make some integers called window height and width, and they're going to be constants of our window height and width. So I'm going to make my window 640 by 480. There we go. And then we're actually going to create the window. So right here we're creating a variable of type SDL window, and it's a pointer to a window. So we're going to call the SDL create window function here. The first parameter we give it is the title. So since we're making a Hello World program, I'm going to give it the title Hello World. The next parameter is the position of the window on your screen. So, for example, if you wanted the window to appear at the very top left of your screen, you'd put it at 0, 0. But we don't want that. We want it to be wherever. So we're just going to give it the flag SDL window pause undefined. And we'll do that for both the X and Y coordinates. Alright, now we pass it the window height and width. And then we give it the flags for what we want our window to be like. So he wants the window to be shown, obviously. Otherwise it wouldn't be much of a window. Alright, and now we check for if that failed. The only way to check for this is to see if it returns null. So if so, we'll say that SDL create window failed. Once again, using SDL get error. Oops. Alright, the next thing that we need to do is create a renderer for this window. A renderer is what displays the graphics in a window, so you can think of it like this. The window holds properties about the window, such as its width and height and title and where it is on the screen and things like that. But then the renderer is displayed in the window and actually displays the graphics. So right here we're going to create a renderer. So we're going to create a variable of type SDL renderer, and once again it's pointer to a renderer, and this time we're going to use the SDL create renderer function. So the first flag is the window that it will be attached to or associated with. So we're going to pass it the window we just created, and then the index of the rendering driver that we want to use. But if you give it -1, it'll just initialize the first one supporting the requested flags. And then we pass it the flags for our renderer. So we want our renderer to be accelerated, and we want it to use VSync. Alright, VSync basically makes it have an even amount of FPS. Oh, whoops. You have to OR them together, not separated with a comma. Alright, so now we have our renderer. Once again, we'll check for if it failed to create the renderer. Alright, and then we'll return 1. Okay, so the next thing to do is to load the image that we're going to use. So for this lesson, we're going to use this Hello World image. So you can download that from the description and put it in your program files, and everything should be fine. So, right here, we're going to create an SDL texture. SDL textures are images that can be rendered on a renderer, to sum it up. So, we're going to use an SDL image function this time. So the function is going to be load texture, because we want to load a texture. So then we pass it the renderer that it's going to be on, and then we pass it the path to the image. So in this case, it's 2 folders up, and I've called it hello world.png. Alright, and once again we check for if it's null. If so, then image load texture failed. So that's how you load an image from a file. You can load any format, not just PNG, pretty much any format, even the brand new WebP format. Alright, and then we'll return 1. Alright, so we've done all of this, but this won't actually do anything, because we haven't told it to put the image anywhere on the screen, or to even show the window. So what we need to do is display the image. Or, whoops, before that, what you need to do is clear the renderer. This basically makes the renderer go all black, so that if you had drawn anything on there previously, all of that would be wiped away and you wouldn't have repeating textures. So we're going to call SDL render, whoops, going to call SDL render clear. And we're going to tell it to clear the render we created. So then that will clear the renderer and make it all black, so that we can start putting stuff on it. Now we need to display the image. So for this we use SDL render copy to copy the texture onto the renderer. So we pass it the renderer, our image, and then the source rect, or the part of the image that we want to copy to the renderer. So in this case, we want to use all of the image, so you can pass it null to tell it that. And then we can specify where on the screen we want to put it. So we want it to span the whole screen, even if it's not big enough, so we pass it null. Later on, you'll learn how you can use SDL rects to tell it where you want to put it on the screen or take from. And finally, we need to update the renderer so that it actually displays the image that was copied onto the renderer to the user. So we use renderer present for this, and we pass it the renderer. So that's pretty much all, but if you try to run this right now, then it'll just pop up for one brief second, so we need to pause it for a second so we can actually see the window. So we'll use the SDL delay function, which will just delay the program for a certain amount of milliseconds, in this case 2 seconds. Alright, that's all. Now we can type return 0 and run the program to see if it worked. And there we go. There's our Hello World program, and it's going to hang around for a second and then close out. So if you see this, then that means you did everything fine. Alright, that's about it for this checkpoint. I hope you enjoyed, and if you ran into any problems or couldn't get something working, then just contact me or post it somewhere, and I'm sure someone will be willing to help you out. So I hope this helped you, and I'll see you next time.